The problem of not learning about ethics and morals, which is as a rule also not practiced in a fully ample wise and only in an inadequate form because they are unknowingly psychologically recommended, where through only certain modes of behavior are supposed to be adhered to in order to be socially useful, has the consequence that the non-mastery of them effectively amply manifests itself. In fact, human beings become addicted not only to their beliefs, but also to the inadequate ethical and moral behavior that results from it. And this happens because the belief addiction neglects all the activities and obligations of reality and its truth, which harms not only human beings themselves, but the entire social environment. Yet human beings who have fallen prey to the belief addiction do not perceive this, for which the reasons are very manifold, most of which can be found in the processes of the brain because, as it is with a substance-related addiction, also the behavior stimulates the limbic system and reacts accordingly. If human beings really want to get away from the belief addiction, religious or worldly, they do not have as good a chance as human beings who have fallen prey to a substance-related addiction, because in the case of the latter, the withdrawal symptoms can be treated medically, and the addicts can, if necessary, be isolated in a clinic or privately. Unfortunately, this is not possible with religious or worldly belief addicts because they are confronted daily with fellow human beings who are also belief addicted and who influence with their addiction those who would like to free themselves from it. Therefore, they are dependent on themselves and on making a conscious effort to create their own clear thoughts and feelings with regard to reality and its truth, and also to living according to them. In doing so, it must also be clear to them that they must retain their will of insight and their behavior to henceforth turn only to reality and its truth. At the same time, it is wrong and therefore not right wanting to keep secret the fact of freeing oneself, because it is to be known that now the thoughts and feelings and the perception of the effective reality are in the foreground and become visible as well as audible. This may now and then also prevent attempts by third parties to achieve the maintenance of the belief delusion addiction by means of wanting to convince. However, it is also necessary not to allow oneself to become glum, anxious, and stirred up mentally and in a feeling-based form. Rather, it requires constant control of one's self-imposed obligation to fight the belief addiction and to discard it. Therefore, it is not a matter of leading a double life, but of living openly and honestly with reality and its truth as it actually is. If this is considered thoroughly, then there will be no weakness or inability to live without the belief delusion addiction, just as there will be no ignorance toward the belief delusion addicted ones, so that they will be treated normally in defiance of their belief delusion, and indeed without being harassed about their pathological craving and so forth. Personally, however, all the necessary defense mechanisms and safeguards against the belief delusion addiction are to be observed, which means that the realness of reality and its truth should never be lost sight of, and thus the thoughts and feelings should remain healthy and directed towards reality, just as the psychic condition has to be continuously stable. think that's a good place to pause.
Right.
Oh, although the belief delusion addiction is very arduous to resolve, it does not correspond to a diagnosis of an absolute life sentence. Because if human beings gain ethical moral knowledge through learning, then the sense for logic, intellect, rationality, and responsibility also arises. There, through it, it results that reality is recognized and no dear God, no angels or saints, good spirits, and so forth guide life and all situations. Rather, human beings on their own do through their conscious thoughts, feelings, rational decisions, and correct actions. At the same time, however, the certainty should always remain present that no belief delusion addiction regulates anything in life, but rather human beings alone determine their correct decisions and their responsible action in every wise through their correct thoughts and worthy feelings. This basis of behavior is built up as naturally as ethics and morals, which of course already arose hundreds of millions of years ago in the first living creatures and ensured that they were able to come together and even form families and herds and handle conflicts. The times since then have flown into the past, and through evolution, human beings have come into being who became capable of conscious thought, of creating feelings, of logic, of intellect, and of rationality. However, instead of turning to natural ethics and morals from the basis and consciously learning them in all their values, they acted contrary and moved away more and more from the natural and thus from the majority of all values of ethics and morals. Through this, they became selfish, wrong thinking, and stored in the depths of their characters all the negativity and evil that erupts at every suitable and unsuitable opportunity and leads to murder and manslaughter, and since time immemorial, even to war and destruction. Then religious belief was added, which developed into delusion and ultimately into addiction, so that the majority of Earth humanity today has fallen prey to the belief delusion addiction and has become incapable of consciously nurturing thoughts and bringing forth feelings autonomously, of taking right decisions and acting without belief delusion addictive factors being at play. The foundation for this is already laid in early childhood, for at this time the foundation of belief, and thus the precursor to the belief delusion addiction, is already built up, which makes human beings incapable of consciously learning all the many values of natural ethics and morals, which in any case are only mentioned in a few values by psychological science, which, however, would be altogether necessary in their entirety for human beings to really become true human beings, which they would naturally have to be from the basis. The ample natural values of ethics and morals, which human beings of Earth, however, neglect and are therefore confronted with constant, unfortunate challenges in life, do not develop autonomously. Rather, they have to be learned consciously and willingly. It is therefore in no wise such as the social media and the psychology sciences keep claiming that everything is perfection, because this lie and delusional leading keeps human beings from scrutinizing ethics and morals and from getting to know that which is publicly taught in this regard by the professionals is nothing more than smoke and mirrors. That which is very inadequately taught neither leads human beings to becoming true human beings, nor does it resolve all the evil and negative, such as hatred, revenge and retaliation, as also not calumny, criminality, and felony, nor lying and cheating, just as also not wars, raging, torturing, destroying, and murdering. Nor does it keep private murder and manslaughter at bay, also not strife, other Gewalt, and all terrible things of any kind whatsoever. With the conscious learning of the values of ethics and morals, human beings come to know their own strengths and values, through which they build up a healthy trust in themselves regarding how they can also use their self-acquired abilities and always remain conscious and really active and capable of acting. The bond with other human beings forms honestly and well, and the dealing with them becomes trustful and reflects that which the character really sets free in the positive, which is fundamentally brought forth by the consciousness and its thoughts and feelings in a positive wise. It is only out of the consciousness that the true state of the values of ethics and morals is formed through conscious learning, which is why this is called moral consciousness, and as a teaching of cognition, knowledge, and principle, is also called moral philosophy. This is established and formed by logic, intellect, and rationality, as well as thoughts and feelings in the negative or positive, where through human beings themselves determine their ethics and the moral status, which also contains aesthetics, thus the teaching of sensual perception, that is to say, viewing. Aesthetics moves the senses while looking at things, through which human beings qualitize them, that is to say, classify them according to their spiritual, fine, sensitive feelings into something pleasant or unpleasant, into something beautiful or ugly, and so forth. However, the creation energy alone guarantees human beings that from their consciousnesses, the thoughts and feelings arising from it in logic, intellect, and rationality determine the state of their ethics and morals and also keep them in function. However, it is human beings themselves who determine how they form these in a positive or negative wise and bring them to fruition, or can exercise and maintain them, however, again in a positive or negative wise, through logical or illogical thoughts and feelings. If they are intellectually good thought impulsations with a consciousness sense of responsibility and also corresponding feelings, then high value ethical, moral, fundamental values of a pronounced good and affirmative attitude with regard to general behavior arises from them. However, from opposite negative thought impulsations and feelings, bad and even body and health harming effects occur, giving rise to a bad moral and emotional condition and causing ethics to sink into nothingness. Thus, positive or bad ethics and morals are based on good or bad thoughts and feelings that bring about an objective, life affirming, or unobjective and life unaffirming moral state, as well as an ethic, that is to say, a moral behavior of a very negative form. However, morals and ethics, which are actually the cornerstones for human beings to be able to live together with their ilk, thus as a family, in friendship and society and so far forth, are also of enormous importance in dealing with themselves, because they fundamentally determine the characters of the human beings. Therefore, it is completely erroneous and wrong to assume as the experts do assume, believe, and teach, that the ethical moral moment is to be valued only as the outward modes of behavior, because fundamentally it determines what, who, and how human beings themselves are. The moral consciousness, that is to say, the moral philosophy that human beings cultivate and show, determines their personalities, namely who, how, and what they are. Furthermore, it indubitably also clearly shows how the consciousness of the human being in question works and how worthy it is in terms of logic, intellect, and rationality.